Welcome home, Mr. Card.
Good to be home.
Where are you based now?
Well, I still have a home in Holbrook and still love the community and try to get up there about every 2 months at a minimum. But my wife is a minister and her church is in McLean, Virginia, so we tend to be in McLean, Virginia more than anywhere else.
Okay.
It's right outside of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a place in Maine that I love to escape to, but I'm on a plane an awful lot as well. I'm serving on a couple corporate boards, Union Pacific Corporation, a company based in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm serving on the board of a Canadian company called Videlasoft, which is based in Montreal, Canada. I'm on the international advisory board of a public relations firm called Fleischman Hillard, and I'm also doing a little bit of on an advisory board with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce out of Washington, D.C. So I find that I'm pretty busy, especially with the speaking circuit, and that's where I have an agent, the Washington Speakers Bureau, and I get paid to give speeches around the country. I'm not getting paid for the speech I'll give tonight at Stonehill College, but I tend to travel around and do an awful lot of college campus speeches and usually get compensated well to do it.
Why did you resign as Chief of Staff?
Well, I think it was important for the President to be able to have some change in his administration. Anybody who claims they want to leave the White House is probably lying. I didn't want to leave the White House. I think it was necessary for me to leave the White House. I think it was good for the President, and I think he needed for me to leave. I think it was good for me to leave the White House, and I had been there for 5.5 years, and I can tell you that it's a time-consuming, it's a life-consuming job. And basically you're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the average tenure for a White House Chief of Staff is a little over 24 months. And I was there I was Chief of Staff to the President or President-elect for 5.5 years. And I think I overstayed my welcome, and I think that I probably wouldn't have lived too long if I stayed in the job too long. So it was a good thing for me to leave.
How much contact do you currently have with President Bush these days?
I have very little contact with him. Socially, I have some contact with him and see him on occasions. He has called me a handful of times since I left the White House, maybe once every 3 or 4 months. I tend to see several people on his staff, and I get an email from his assistant almost every week inviting me to go bicycling with him, but I seldom can do it because I'm traveling so much. But I consider him a friend, and I know he considers me a friend, and he's been very good to me. But he's got a job to do, and he shouldn't be worrying about his friend because my friendship is unconditional.
Do you ever offer the President advice?
Only if asked to do so, and he doesn't need my advice now. I think that he needed it when I was Chief of Staff, and he sought it, and I gave it to him. But it's a different role. I'm really in a role now as a friend, and I'll be there for him. And he's asked for my advice on a few occasions since I left the White House, but it's usually centered around personnel decisions. And I would maintain the privacy of that conversation so that he can make the decisions that he thinks are right.
Turning to politics, do you have any future political aspirations in Massachusetts or otherwise?
Oh, I don't have any short-term aspirations, but I would never shut the door. I grew up in a family that taught us to be involved in our government, and from the days that I was on the planning board in Holbrook and on the permanent school building committee and a town meeting member, I happen to feel we have a responsibility to participate in the political process, and that means participate in politics, and I do, and I look forward to it. So I'll never stop doing it, but I can honestly say that no, I'm not out here trolling for support or looking to be a candidate, but I would love to, participate in our government, and I am not the least bit bashful about saying that, but no, I'm not an active candidate.
Okay, so you haven't ruled out running for office?
I haven't ruled out anything, but I think there's some practicality to it. I don't think my wife really would like me to get back involved the way I was before.
Turning to the presidential race, do you think a Republican will win the presidency next year?
I think the Republicans have a decent chance of winning, but it's not like they're the favorites. I think the favorites would be the Democrats. After all, you've had a Republican president now will be 8 years when he leaves office, and there's a normal tendency to change parties. It's abnormal not to. But I think that the race is still relatively wide open.
Who do you think is the strongest Republican candidate and why?
Well, that's a slippery slope. I'm a cheerleader for all of the Republicans who are running. I have not signed on with anyone. I'm friends with Mitt Romney and Rudy Giuliani and Fred Thompson and John McCain and Mike Huckabee. I know Ron Paul. I don't know Tom Tancredo very well, but I know the candidates. I respect them. I'm a cheerleader for all of them, but I'm not signing on with any one candidate, so I'm not going to answer your question.
Okay.
They all do their homework. They all have assets, and I don't think any of them have significant liabilities, so I think any one of them would be a good standard bearer for the party.
Okay, my next question was, are you supporting Mitt Romney? And you've already answered that.
I'm a cheerleader, but I'm not supporting him. How's that?
Would you ever serve in a Romney administration in any capacity?
Oh, I would never, let's put it this way, I would go out of my way to try to say yes to any president who asked me to do anything. Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, I guess I could say Whig or Federalist. I mean, but I happen to feel as a citizen of the country, if the government says they need help, we have an obligation to try to find a way to say yes. So I may counsel them against having me say yes and withdrawing the offer, but I would never turn down a responsibility that the president asked me to accept if I felt that the president really needed me to help him do a good, or her do a good job for the country. But I don't have that expectation from a lot of people. But yes, I have been brought up to say yes rather than no when it comes to government service.
Who do you predict will be the strongest Democratic candidate for president next year?
Well, I think Hillary Clinton has the broadest appeal from her experience in life. And Barack Obama has not had as many experiences in the political process or in the responsibilities of governing. But having said that, I think that she is so controversial, and there is, I think she's the best candidate for the Republicans to be able to challenge in a November election, because she is such a well-known entity. But having said that, she certainly is qualified to be able to run for president. And I think the breadth of experience that she had justifies that she's the front runner right now.
How big of a role will the war have in the next election?
Well, I think it will have a disproportionately large role in the Democratic primary than it will in the general election. I actually feel that progress is quite significant in Iraq and in Afghanistan and in the war on terror. And remember, the war on terror is the overall war. There are battles being fought in Afghanistan and battles being fought in Iraq, but they're all part of the war on terror. And we have to succeed in those two battlefields in order to be able to succeed in the war on terror. So it's critical that we succeed in Iraq, and I think we're making significant progress. And I think over the course of the last 6 months, we've seen that that progress has been measurable, and therefore the war itself is not as unpopular as it was even a couple months ago.
Do you see an end to the war anytime soon?
Not against, I don't see an end to the war on terror. I think that we're going to be in this war for a very long time, not unlike the Cold War. We were in the Cold War for a very long time. And it's critical that we be successful so that we can have the war on terror be successful. And winning in Iraq is an important part of that success.
One more question, is that
Okay.
okay? I just want to ask you, as a former chief of staff, you're from this region, as is the current ATF director, Michael Sullivan.
Great guy from my hometown originally.
How well do you know Michael Sullivan?
I've known Michael Sullivan for a long time. He went to high school with my sister. And so I've known Michael Sullivan. He served in the legislature, did a great job, was a great sheriff, and he's been a wonderful U.S. attorney for Massachusetts. He's a good friend and valuable supporter. And I know most people think of him as from Abington, but he was really from Holbrook originally. And so he's a favorite son of this area, and rightfully so. He's done a terrific job as the acting head of the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I guess they've got a new name now,
And
but
explosives, I think.
it's
Yeah.
he does a very good job, and I see him in Washington occasionally.